Welcome class to your lecture video for Chapter 3, Working with Text in CSS. In this chapter, we are going to dive into cascading style sheets. We're going to use the CSS Designers panel to allow us to add rules, apply those rules, edit those rules, and we'll also be using with the Property Inspector with regards to applying those rules. What we will look at unordered and ordered lists, as well as looking at our related files toolbar, and then looking into the media queries within, for example, su_styles.css. And then we'll look at how we can enhance fonts by using Adobe Edge Web Fonts. And then lastly, we'll look at coding tools to view and edit rules. So this chapter, although only given a week, has a fair amount of content to it. So what I suggest you do for this video is break it out into lessons. The chapter exercises aren't that complex. It's just the material is quite a bit. So take some time to go ahead and read through the chapter, listen to this lecture video, and look at the PowerPoint slides as well. So that's where we'll begin, is the PowerPoint. So again, Chapter 3, Working with Text and Cascading Style Sheets. So what is the benefit of using cascading style sheets? Well, we can save time by defining consistent formatting attributes, and we can apply formatting to any element. And so you'll see that kind of trickle in a little bit as you start to learn to create rules and then learn to apply them. And over time, it starts to kind of make sense as to why the recommendation is to use cascading style sheets to format web pages. Formatting text as lists. So lists are used to break up large blocks of content within a page, or maybe it's a list that you have in a sentence format, but now you chose to break it up into an unordered or an ordered list just to make it more readable. So remember that our visitors like to scan, and if they see a list, it's probably going to draw more attention than if they were to see list items separated by commas in a paragraph. Lists are also used to create navigation bars, so our navigation within a website. So three types of lists: unordered, ordered, and then definition lists. Unordered lists are lists of items that do not appear in a specific type of sequence. They're usually by default preceded by a bullet or a small dot, and they're sometimes called bulleted lists. In Dreamweaver, the default bullet style is the round dot. To change the bullet style to a different symbol, we are going to use cascading style sheets to do so. You can create a rule to modify the unordered list, and this is the HTML tag that you see here, used to create an unordered list that will apply to all lists in a website. So here's an example of a rule that is created not only for unordered lists but also ordered lists. So UL, comma, space, OL. So this particular rule here, I'm not sure exactly, they have a padding on the left side of 40 pixels. So it's indenting an unordered list and an ordered list here, 40 pixels in from the left. Ordered lists are sometimes referred to as number lists, and again, these would be ones that would need to be in a specific sequence. They're preceded by a sequential number or even a letter. Again, you can format an ordered list to show different styles of numbers, maybe Roman numerals, for example, by using CSS. So here's an example of going about that. So in an unordered list environment, the text property, and you can see the text category here, list style type, and this is decimal. Now we can change that to the values that would be available for us. Definition lists are similar to unordered lists, but have a hanging indent and are not preceded by bullets. They are often used with terms and definitions such as a dictionary or a glossary. So to learn more about how to incorporate definition lists, we go to W3 Schools, because in Dreamweaver currently, right now, as of our new version 2019, you cannot use the menu to go ahead and create these. So you actually have to physically code it in the code itself. So DL stands for definition list or description list. And then we have our description term and then our description definition. So the format of this would be this right here. So coffee would be our description text. Our description definition, indented, would be black hot drink. So this might be something that you try to incorporate into your coffee shop website, maybe when you're setting up a menu. So now let's look at pages 6 through 9 in your textbook with regards to stripe and umbrella. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the SPA page, and inside the SPA page we're going to create 3 unordered lists, and then we're going to add some content and create an ordered list with that added content. So it says SPA page, select the 3 items in the descriptions under the massages heading. So our 3 items here. And then you're going to use your properties inspector to create the unordered list or the bulleted list. We're going to do the same thing under facials. And the same thing under body treatments. Now with body treatments, you want to make sure that you don't grab that last paragraph that starts with call the C-Spa desk. You just want your 3 items. Now let's take a view of the code. Here's our unordered list, and the list item is Salt Glow. We're doing a kind of a soft break with Shift Enter on your keyboard, as I talked about in Chapter 1. Shift Enter, and that just pushes, in this case, what this particular body treatment is, a description of it. And it just continues down as many list items as you need, and then once we're done with that unordered list, we close it out. Creating an ordered list, we're going to add some content after our last paragraph here. So I'm going to take an enter down, and then I'm going to open up a file from my data files. And it's questions.txt. I'm going to Control A on my keyboard in Windows to copy or select all, and then Control C, and then I'm going to head and paste that content in here. And if you have an extra space here, just use your backspace to move it back up, or your delete key just to snug it in there. And then we want to take these 4 questions and make them an ordered list. Now we're going to further format questions you may have as a heading 3, just to break it out as a section, just like we had with these particular sections. So I think we'll continue, and we're going to use some CSS to format massages and facials and body treatments. So that leads us into lesson 2. Creating a cascading style sheet. Apply, edit, and add rules. So CSS is made up of formatting attributes called rules. So we saw in the previous lesson that we had a rule called UL, OL, and that rule had some formatting that then formatted the unordered list and the ordered list. So that's just an example of it. And we will define that formatting. Style sheets are classified by where their code is stored. Most often, and most recommended, is to use a separate file or an external style sheet. You can also place them in the head content of an individual web page, and these are sometimes called internal, embedded, or page styles. Or as part of the body of the HTML code, these are inline styles. So the bottom one here is not recommended. Number 2, you can use, just saying if you needed to override a particular style that's in the external style sheet for one individual web page, but most often we try to get everything in an external style sheet. External styles are saved in a .css extension, and they are stored in the root directory of your website. They are, again, the preferred method. So external style sheets are the preferred method for creating and using styles. So in our example, we have su_styles.css and boilerplate. Those are our two CSS files. So boilerplate and su_styles. So we will never touch boilerplate. Okay, this is what sets up our fluid grid layout. And so we're going to be adding everything that we do in su_styles. And I'll show you that through the CSS Designers panel here soon. So CSS also classified by their type. So a class can be used to format any element, and so classes can be used more than once. An ID and a tag type are used to redefine an HTML tag. IDs are used only once, and tags are, for example, a P tag or an H1 tag, header 2 tag, header 3. They're a particular HTML5 tag. IDs are preceded with a # or a hashtag, and classes are preceded with a period. And then the compound is used to format a selection. So for example, UL space LI would be a compound type. You can use buttons on the CSS Designers panel to create, edit, and apply rules. So to add a rule, we're going to use our sources pane, and we want to make sure that we use, replace it in the correct source as well as the correct media. The tag generated by a rule is called a selector, and a selector selects HTML elements and applies the rule to style that HTML element. Now once you've added a new selector to a style sheet, it appears in a list in the CSS Designer. And soon we'll see all of this. Okay, so let's, there are many benefits to using CSS styles. We can define a rule, and then we can apply it to, hundreds of pages. Okay, and then if we need to update, say, a font size or a font color because of a change in marketing, then we go to that one style sheet file, we make the change there, and it updates the hundreds of pages. Style sheets create a more uniform look from page to page, and they generate cleaner code. Style sheets separates the content itself from the way the content is presented. So example here, this is our content of our page, but if I want this to be a blue heading, I will then use CSS to present that as a blue heading, but the actual content is in the HTML code itself. Pages formatted with CSS styles are more compliant with current accessibility standards than those with manual formatting. You can see the properties for a CSS rule by looking at the style sheet code. A CSS rule consists of two parts, the selector and the declaration. The selector is the name of the tag or class or ID to which the style declarations have been assigned. The selector consists of its name and then the declarations using format, property, and value. So here's an example. So all of the previous slides will hopefully make more sense now. Here's our selector. Since this is preceded with a period, this is a class. And this class nav_UL can be applied to more than one item on the page because it's a class. Then we have the declarations, which include the property and the value. So property is width, the value is 100%. Property is margin left, and that value is 0. So let's look at pages 12 through 19. So create a cascading style sheet and add a rule. So we're going to be creating a external style sheet file using CSS Designers panel. So it says select the CSS button in the Properties Inspector to switch to the CSS Property Inspector as shown in figure 11. So that's just a button down here in the Properties Inspector. And then we are going to open up the CSS Designers panel. So this was either, it might be docked over here, or if you don't see it over here with your Files panel, go to Window and then go to CSS Designer. So I'm going to take mine and I'm going to drag it out. And then I'm going to it resized for me. So if you don't have this 2-column layout, go ahead and drag it. And I just want to go over what I was talking about in the PowerPoint a bit. So since I'm on SU Styles over here in my Related Files toolbar, I'm only going to see, or I'm going to see that and then the boilerplate. So if you don't see your sources correctly, make sure that you click on Source Code in the Related Files toolbar and then click on All. Current only gives me currently what I'm sitting on with my cursor. So two things that you want to make sure is you're always on is Source Code in Related Files toolbar and then the All tab. Okay, so then I see all sources. Boilerplate, again, we never touch. Okay, so make sure that you never add anything in there. And then we're going to be in, most of the time we're going to be in SU Styles, but today we're going to add a new source. So we're going to click on the plus symbol and create a new CSS file. And we are going to call this headings.css. So we're going to browse, and I'm going to save this in my Striped Umbrella root folder. Let's see here. That's not that one. It is, I gotta go up one level. Striped Umbrella. And I'm going to overwrite this one because I've done these exercises before. So I'm just going to click on Save. And you won't have this unless you've done the exercise more than once, but you want it to say headings.css. So when I was here, you would type in here, headings.css in the file name. You can even just type headings because the save as type is .css. So I'll go ahead and do that again. And then you want to leave it as link and then click OK. Now I have a new source in my sources panel of the CSS Designer. So headings, I have no media queries and I have no selectors. So what they want us to do then is to create a new class in number 6 on page 13. And this class is called list_headings. Now notice that I typed a period at the very beginning of that because that's how classes are created, is with a period. Okay, if you're missing the period, you're never going to see it in the option to apply. Okay, so always make sure classes have the period at the very beginning. And then I'm going to create some declarations. So I need to uncheck the show set, and then I have categories. I have layout, text, border, background, and then more. Well, I want to be in text, and then I'm going to apply 5 styles. So my color, I'm going to type in here hashtag 000066. And then I'm going to do my font family, font style of normal, font weight of bold, and font size of medium. So when I check on show set, here I will see that I have 5 rules applied, and those are specified in number 8 on page 13. So when you want to add, you uncheck show set, then you get all your categories. If you want to see what you have applied to that particular selector, click on the show set checkbox. Okay, apply a rule. So now I've created the rule called list headings. I've got my properties and my values assigned. So now I'm going to actually go ahead and apply it. So I'm going to apply it to my headings. So I'm going to hit massages. And now I need to jump back to HTML. Actually, let's see here. Nope, not in here. I'm going to go to HTML, and then I'm going to go to class, and then I'm going to find list headings. And you'll notice that they most often show the exact formatting that you applied through your declarations. So there's list headings. I'm going to do the same thing for facials, and then the same thing for body treatments. Now what's nice about this is when I on page 15 go to edit the rule, because now I've determined that this isn't large enough for me, I go to CSS Designers panel, I change the font size to large, and I want you to watch body treatments increase in size. And now it increases, and if I scroll up, facials and massages did so as well. So presentation in the CSS, the structure, the content in the HTML. And that's one of the recommendations, is to separate those two items. Okay, we're going to look at viewing with the Code Navigator on page 16. I will admit that I don't use this very often, but it is really neat and handy if you're going to be one that likes to view code. So hovering over massages heading, I'm going to hold down my Alt button and click on it. And now I get my Code Navigator. So here I can see that through boilerplate, these are the styles that are applied to massages. Headings, this is the list headings that we just applied. And then these are the styles that are applied through SU_styles. Okay, so I'm going to select list headings, and when I do that in the Code Navigator, it automatically opens up the CSS file. So if I needed to modify it through the code, I could go about doing it this way. So here we want to change this to 3.3, and then if I click up here in the design, you can see a subtle change. So if I were to actually change this to be something more drastic, such as FF0000, which is red, and click up here, you would actually see that change a little bit better. But we'll leave it as it is so that we just have a darker blue. Add a tag selector to an existing style sheet. So now we're going to go back and we're going to add in more styles. Let's see if I can get out of here. Enter. There we go. So headings.css. Again, that's the only option I have here, or all sources. I'm going to jump back to source code so that I can see all my sources and make sure I'm on that all tab. And then I'm going to add a new selector to headings.css, and it's going to be header 1. Now I'm going to add 2 more. You can follow the directions as is, but I'm just going to add 2 more, header 2 and header 3. Now I want you to notice carefully that these are not preceded by a paragraph, because these are actual HTML tags. So we're just using the content of the tag itself as a selector here. So for heading 1, we're going to apply a couple styles, and heading 1 is going to be font family, Gotham, font size, extra large. Okay, so 2 styles applied. Then heading 2 is going to be the same font family, and the font size is just going to be a little bit smaller in large. And then heading 3, okay, so if I were to look at each one of these, the only thing that's different is the font size. So heading 1 being the largest, and heading 3 being our smallest one here. So that is a little touch of your CSS Designers panel by adding a new source and adding new selectors. Again, classes prefixed with a period, tags not prefixed. Understanding related files and media queries. So style sheets can be used to format text objects, set the page background, link properties, determine the appearance of any element on the page. So we have a style sheet called boilerplate.css, and this is our fluid grid layout. It's generated by Dreamweaver, and again, we don't touch any code in there. And then we have our individual style sheet that's for our, in this case, striped umbrella, SU_styles. And then we have headings.css is the one that we just created. And then we have respond.min.js, which is another related file. And this is our fluid grid layout. This is necessary with JavaScript. When you have several pages at a website, you'll probably want to use the same styles. And that, again, that is one of the reasons why we use CSS. But we also have what we have called responsive design, and we'll talk about that when we get to the media queries. So to attach a style sheet to another document, you simply add CSS source. So if I wanted to attach this headings.css file to, let's say, index, with index open, I would click here, add CSS source, and then I would say attach existing CSS file. I would browse to it, and then I would grab headings.css. Okay? And that's not one of the steps that we want to do, but that's just an example of what you could do. I'll do a save all here real quick before I continue on. External style sheets can be attached or linked to any page. They're extremely powerful, again, because when I demonstrated how we changed the font size for that list underscore headings, again, it updated just one page, but just imagine if headings.css was attached to hundreds of pages. It would update all of those hundreds of pages. When an HTML file is linked to a CSS file or any other file, it is called a related file. So anything beyond source code here is what we call related files, and that's why this is called the Related Files toolbar. When a web page is opened in a browser, the style sheet detects the device by using media queries. So responsive design simply means that how are we going to respond to whatever device the user is using to visit our website. So when they detect a mobile device, they direct users media queries to the code that is used for mobile devices. And if they detect a tablet, they direct it to the tablet code. Each set of code is designed for optimum viewing on that particular device. So let's look at pages 22 and 23, examining our media queries code. So we're going to look directly in SU styles, and we're just going to look down the code. So everything that here at the top is what we call global styles or mobile styles. So when Dreamweaver creates a fluid grid layout, it starts with the mobile side first, so defining everything for a smartphone first. Then as you scroll down, you will see that the next section, the first media query, is for tablet. So it says tablet layout 481 to 768 inherits styles from mobile layout. So it inherits everything up here, and then anything we want to redefine we have in this section. So media only screen and min width 481. So the minimum width for this media section, which starts right here, okay, is 481. Now if I keep going down, I'm going to see that the close of it is right here. So when you're copying and pasting styles, it's very important that you do not delete this extra one. Okay, this one corresponds to this one. This one is closing out the media query, in this case for our tablet layout. Now if I can continue down, beyond that I have a media query for desktop, and the minimum width for the desktop is 769. So again, that media query starts here and it ends here. Okay, so that is your media queries. So when I look at them in the CSS Designers panel, I have global, which is my smartphone styles. Then I have tablet, which is the min width 481, and I have desktop, which is the min width 769. So when defining, you want to make sure that you're not only in the correct source, but you're also in the correct media as we continue through this course. Adding Adobe Edge web fonts. There are two classifications of fonts, sans serif and serif. Sans serif fonts are fonts without any extra strokes at the end. So an example, sans means without, so without the stroke. So for an example of that, the font that you're looking at right now has no little extra character at the end. Okay, but if you were to look at a Times New Roman font, you're going to see a little curl at the end of each letter that allows the eye to kind of just travel across the text a little better. And that's a serif font. Many designers feel that a sans serif font is preferable when the content of the website is primarily intended to be read on the screen, but a sans serif font is that for printing. When you choose fonts, keep in mind the amount of text each page will contain and whether most users will read the text on the screen or they will go about printing it. A good rule of thumb is to limit each website to no more than 3 font variations. And again, we can enhance our font availability to us. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this one, font family. So these are the default font combinations that are available to us. We can click on Manage Fonts, and then we can use Adobe Edge Web Fonts, something that was given to us through Adobe through Typekit. We can search for a particular font. We can use categories over here such as headings or paragraphs, sans fonts, serif fonts, slab fonts, script fonts, black letter, monospace, which is typically what you see for code, handmade fonts, and decorative fonts, and list of fonts previously added to your font list. Okay, so lots of options for us. Get out of there. Okay, once you choose a font family, those fonts are integrated into Dreamweaver font menus for instant access. They're stored on Creative Cloud with embedded instructions in the page code for each device calling upon that page. So here's the instructions. So when you use another font, okay, you want to make sure that you're prompted always by Dreamweaver to incorporate this into your code. If you're not, you may have to go ahead and apply it again, and then Dreamweaver will prompt you, or maybe it's simply as something as copy and pasting it from another page. So you should always have this when you're using something other than those generic font families. So in this case, Source Sans Pro is the one that is being used. So just as I showed you here, we use the Adobe Edge Web Fonts through Manage Fonts in our dialog box in the CSS Designers panel. So here's that dialog box that I just went through. Once you select a new Adobe Edge Web font, you will see it listed in the available fonts. And then you have to go ahead and select it to actually use it. So let's go ahead and practice pages 26 and 27. So in headings.css, for heading 1, we are going to add a different heading. So we're going to click on Manage Fonts, and then we're going to go to Recommended Heading Fonts, and we are going to find Source Sans Pro. So when you select a font, it gets this blue little check mark next to it, and then that adds it to the list. So notice here it didn't change it to Source Sans Pro. I need to come back and then click Source Sans Pro from my list of available fonts. Okay, and then if I were to go ahead and save here, hopefully I will get prompted. File, save all. Nope, didn't prompt. So then I'm going to go to the Tools menu, and I am going to go to Cleanup Web Font Script Tag Current Page. And now when I do that, it adds Source Sans Pro. So you want to make sure that this is being added when you add any Adobe Edge Web font. So if you don't see it, sometimes Dreamweaver will prompt you and ask you for permission to add it. If you don't see it, then I need you to go to the Tools menu. Okay, and this is different than the directions on page 27. So it says Commands menu, but we're going to the Tools menu and then Clean Up Web Font Script Tag Current Page. Okay, this command updates the script tag to add new fonts recently selected. Okay, now if I view the source code, I'm going to see that script tag right here. So right before the closing head tag, I see script If I want to put these on 2 different lines, I can, but I'll just leave it. The following script tag downloads a font from Adobe EdgeWeb Font Server using use within the page. We recommend that you do not modify it. Okay. Use EdgeWeb Fonts Source Sans Pro. So without this link, my heading 1 would not change at all. And this is my heading 1. And that's really not source, maybe it is. Let's look at Live View. That's what Source Sans Pro looks like. So it's linking to a URL, so therefore you're either going to have to use Live View or a browser to actually see that font. Using coding tools to view and edit rules. This is our last lesson that we'll go through. So in CodeView, you can use the coding toolbar. It contains a number of handy tools that help you navigate through and view your code in different ways. We can expand and collapse code. You can customize the way your page code appears in CodeView, wrap your lines, display or hide lines, highlight invalid code, have different code types appear in different colors, indent lines of code, display syntax error alerts. If you are typing directly in CodeView, Dreamweaver can speed your work by giving you code hints. So for example, if I were in here and I started to, I'm actually going to delete this because this is empty. So if you ever run into any of this when you're viewing your code, you can go ahead and clean it up. I am going to type in an image tag. So I would type in IMG. And then as I start to type SRC, it pops up for me. This is code hints. And then it allows me to browse, and I could browse to a particular image if I wanted. So that's an example of code hints. Sometimes they're very useful, and sometimes pop-ups can be kind of annoying in a way, but most of the time they're useful. You can also convert one type of style to another. For instance, you can move an embedded style to an external style sheet, or you can move an inline style to an embedded style, or you can move in a style from one external style sheet to another external style sheet. So that's what we're going to practice next, is our last section. So collapsing code, all of these arrows over here, that's the example of how you could collapse code. So if I wanted to collapse the entire body section, I can do that and then go ahead and expand it. Most often students stumble upon this by accidentally clicking. Okay, so this one I could click, collapse is that one. Okay, so page 32, move a style from one style sheet to another. So headings.css had our purpose of showing you how to create a new external style sheet. But honestly, these all should be placed in SU styles. So we're going to use that to go about doing that. So I'm going to click on source code, CSS Designer, all, and then I'm going to take and drag and drop these into SU styles. So list headings, drag onto SU styles. Heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. Now my headings.css is empty. So I can go ahead and remove it as a source. If I look at SU styles, I will see at the very bottom I have list headings, heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. Now, when I move them, it moved them to the bottom of SU styles, and these are considered global styles, so they need to be moved within the code itself. So this is where I need you to be really careful. So at the bottom of this style sheet is list headings, and it's right after the close of the media query for desktop. So I want to take these, since they're global, they're not part of a media query, and I'm going to cut them. And if you want, you can take those blank lines at the very end of the file away. And then I'm going to come up to my global section, which is the top of my file. This is my mobile side, my smartphone side. And after the last, and right before my tablet comment, is where I'm going to paste those global styles. Okay, so be very careful when you're moving and copying and pasting that you don't accidentally destroy the close of the media query. If you do, things go really awry, and if they do, all you need to do is give me an email and we'll get it fixed. But always upload to the server so that I can debug code from there. Okay, so that is your chapter 3. Again, quite a bit of content. Go ahead and make sure you practice everything through Striped Umbrella. Just a reminder, Striped Umbrella is not graded, but I would upload it to the server, just in case you were to lose that flash drive, or you were to have your hard drive crash, or maybe accidentally delete stuff. You can always go back to the server and download. Okay. So here's a couple modifications. Talked about that tools menu. And then blooms and bulbs, pages 34 and 35. So creating an unordered and ordered list, creating an external style sheet called headings.css, creating bullet term in there, along with a heading 1 tag, and then using some Adobe Edge Web fonts, and then ultimately moving bullet term and heading 1 to bb_styles. So the file that you should see is tips.html. That's the one that is going to be the one that is updated for Blooms. Then in TripSmart, we have newsletters, so a brand new file being brought in through the data files. And then basically the same thing, list_terms class, and then heading 1, and then moving them again to TripSmart_styles. And then the last thing here is Coffee Shop. So Coffee Shop, in chapter 2, we created a blank index file that had no formatting to it at all. I had you give me a page title, I had you give me keywords and description, I had you give me 200 words of page content, and then the address information and a last updated statement. So with that done and completed for chapter 2, you're going to create it or save it as index2.html. Do not update links, and then you're going to copy related files that are linked to index. We did this in chapter 2, so you need to get boilerplate BB styles. Okay, we're going to use this as our template. You're welcome to use SU styles or TripSmart_styles. It just has to be one of those, and respond to your Coffee Shop folder. So to do that, once you have Blooms completed, then go ahead and copy it. So I'm going to use my completed version of chapter 3. Oh, I'm in the wrong one here. I need to be in documents. Completed. So in Blooms, I would copy BB styles, boilerplate, and respond. I'm going to copy these files, and then I would go back to where my websites are at, which is my desktop, Coffee Shop, and I would paste them in here. Okay, and then you need to take your index file. So let me go to Coffee Shop here. So now you see those ones that I just copied over. And I have nothing in my index beyond just what I showed you as a template. So you're going to take, let me go back to the directions here because I want to follow them as exact. With the index file open, file save it as index 2. So your work from chapter 2 is now saved as index 2. Okay, a backup file. I'm going to get this saved. Okay, so this is my backup file, index 2. So this is what's going to have your page title in it. It's going to have your keywords and your description, your 200 words of content, your address information, and your last updated statement. Okay, that's your index 2 because we just did a file save as. Okay, then I already copied those related files. Then it says to rename SU_styles, and that should actually say BB_styles, or maybe I need to change this. So we're going to rename this one here CS_styles for coffee shop. Okay, and then copy page content from your current index file over page content. Maybe I did this wrong here. Nope, see, I did this wrong. So you're going to open up your home page from Striped Umbrella. Okay, so home page from Striped Umbrella. So make sure you save your, let me follow these directions as I wrote them, So use index from Striped Umbrella. With this index file, save it as index2. Okay, so let's just back up here and do these directions the way I have them stated. So, index file from Striped Umbrella. Just want to make sure I'm in the right one. File, save as, in my coffee shop folder as index2. Yes to overwrite. Well, you shouldn't have that. Always okay on the JavaScript error for anytime, and then no on update links. Okay, so this is broken, of course. Okay, and then we would, hopefully I saved that in the right spot. So is this index2? Yes. And then we're going to update this to be CS_styles. So since I had already named it over here, I'm going to have to go about it a different way here in code view. So I'm just going to change this from SU_styles to CS_styles. Now let me come back to design view. It looks better. So whenever you get that gray screen, you know that your style sheet is not linked correctly. So make sure whatever it's named over here is how it appears here, and if it doesn't, you go to code view and you make sure that it's updated the same. So now you see that we have this CSS layout. This is the layout that I want you to shoot for chapter 3. And then I want you to take your page content from your index file and paste it over top of this page content. So those 200 beautiful words that you came up for chapter 2. Okay, you're going to paste over this. Go ahead and update your address information as well. Okay. The last updated statement you do not need to have down here because it's right here. Okay, so you may want to just put that right in here. Insert it as a data object again. Okay, so let's go back to my directions here. Copy meta keywords and description from index to index2. So from your index from chapter 2 to our new file for chapter 3, which is index2, right before the head tag. So let me go ahead and update that. What happens in Blackboard is of course a web page, right? And so what happens sometimes is when I type in actual tags, it converts them. So right before head tag. So if I must have had brackets around there, and so then it converted it that way. So let me, while I'm here, update this to SU_styles. So we keep everything Striped Umbrella, and we use Striped Umbrella as our template. And then update their page title, so the page title that you came up with in your index file from chapter 2. And then when you're all done and you have your page title copied over, your keywords and description, your page content over to this templated file here, then you're going to go File, Save As, and you're going to save it over your index file. Okay? So make sure that you do that last step, save index2 over index once all of these steps have been completed. And then add any CSS styles that you would like to add in, such as headings, subheadings, those kind of things. Okay, follow the directions as I have them stated here and you'll be fine. Okay, complete experiment with text color contrast wiki. So this one right here, we're going to look at some colors that we can use and what are the color recommendations for websites. So if you have any questions on any of the material or any of the assignments or any debugging that you need me to do, just make sure you always upload to the server and then send me an email. Thank you for your time.